Welcome back to Veretta Park. We're in Seattle, Washington, and I think we're like 9 hours in and someone finally brought a guitar, because that's what we're here to do. We're here to celebrate the music of Nirvana, the legacy of Kurt Cobain. And as you can see back here, we've got some very young girls sitting on the bench, and they could probably only be like maybe 10 or 11 years old, so it's amazing that Nirvana has touched their lives. That is the power of music. And right now we've got a special look at Nirvana, getting back into our Nirvana programming. Here is Nirvana, 3 Years Forever.
Here they are, Nirvana.
It's hard to process the fact that it's been 10 years since Nirvana leader Kurt Cobain committed suicide. Cobain's body was found in a house in Seattle.
Kurt Cobain dead.
I wanted to cry.
It was devastating.
Leaving the world of music much diminished.
I would love to have effect on the world the same way Kurt Cobain had on the world.
MTV News looks back at Nirvana's history and its still influential legacy, examining why people still care about this great band.
One of the greatest bands of all time.
And reliving the dark day when Kurt Cobain brought it suddenly to an end. Hi, I'm Kurt Loder. Welcome to Nirvana, 3 Years Forever. 10 years ago this month, the music world was rocked by an event from which it arguably still hasn't recovered. On the morning of April 8th, 1994, rumors began leaking out of Seattle that Nirvana leader Kurt Cobain had committed suicide. By the afternoon, those rumors, unbelievably, had proven to be true. A self-inflicted gunshot to the head had silenced a uniquely gifted artist and instantly ended the career of the most charismatic band of the 1990s. Popular music was pretty much a sea of goo as the 90s got underway. Debbie Gibson, anyone? Michael Bolton? Paula Abdul? And a lot of the rock bands of the period were heavily dependent on hairstyling. A lot of young people at the time had it with this stuff. They'd had it with their baby boomer parents, who more likely than not were divorced, and they'd had it with an economic recession that was making it hard for them to find jobs and move out of the house on their own. And they didn't feel that Wilson Phillips, let's say, really offered a soundtrack for their lives. But by 1991, there were winds of change blowing. In July, a new kind of alternative music tour, the Lollapalooza Festival, kicked off in Phoenix. And something was definitely happening in Seattle, with bands like the Melvins and Soundgarden, already an underground buzz, and Alice in Chains, which had even scored an MTV hit with Man in the Box. Yes, Seattle, with its thrift store chic and its grunge rock music, was a whole new scene.
It was incredible. Like, people were, diving all over each other and falling down drunk and smiling and just vomiting and having a great time. It's just, there were no inhibitions at that time. So everyone decided, let's have fun.
The band that would become Nirvana was formed by Kurt Cobain and Chris Novoselic in 1987 in Aberdeen, Washington, the logging town where they'd both grown up.
I didn't see much future for those guys. They were pretty much bordering on retarded, bums, basically unemployed, and rock and roll made them millionaires.
In 1988, with Chad Channing on drums, Nirvana went into an 8-track studio in Seattle and recorded a debut album for about $600. Bleach made some underground noise, and a few months after its 1989 release, Dave Grohl, the drummer with the DC hardcore band Scream, relocated to Seattle to round out the lineup of what would soon become the most charismatic rock band of the 1990s. Nirvana's major label debut was Nevermind, and its lead single was a track called Smells Like Teen Spirit, an instant epical hit.
We weren't aware of our stardom. We just got reports every once in a while, hey, you guys are on the top 40, like, really?
Smells Like Teen Spirit was an electrifying anthem, and the video for the song, heavily rotated on MTV, made Kurt Cobain an international star.
It was just the right time. It was just the right album at the right time.
Nirvana connected with people in a way that few bands ever do. Millions were deeply moved by Kurt Cobain's pain and ambivalence and by his unflinching honesty. But Cobain himself, who had nothing but contempt for corporate rock stars, was overwhelmed by the stardom that had suddenly engulfed him. He was also afflicted with a chronic and painful stomach condition that had tormented him for years.
I was in pain. I was in pain for so long that I didn't care if I was in a band. I didn't care if I was alive.
In February of 1992, Cobain married Courtney Love, the tempestuous leader of the indie band Hole. Before long, rumors of heroin use began to spread. In August, Courtney gave birth to a baby girl, Frances Bean. LA child welfare authorities attempted to remove the infant from Kurt and Courtney's custody, charging that as drug users they were unfit parents. By this point, Cobain's growing drug addiction was also taking a heavy toll on his band.
Yeah, drugs don't necessarily always help. Like, wow, what's the f***ing deal with heroin? What?
With Cobain increasingly ambivalent about Nirvana's huge popular success, the band chose the uncompromising, anti-commercial Chicago producer Steve Albini to produce their third album, the once again superb In Utero, which came out in September of 1993. Hooked on heroin, Cobain had begun threatening suicide. The night before playing a show at New York's Roseland Ballroom, he came close to killing himself.
He overdosed, and someone brought him back. And then we played the show. It was like, that was great. I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. Who am I? What is this band?
In February of 1994, Nirvana embarked on a European tour. On March 4th in Rome, Cobain overdosed on a prescription tranquilizer called Rohypnol. Although it wasn't reported at the time, he was said to have left a suicide note. After a week's hospitalization in Rome, Kurt Cobain boarded a plane and returned home to Seattle for the last time. 1 month later, Kurt Cobain was dead, and the music world was reeling. To help process this heartbreaking loss, millions of Nirvana fans turned to MTV, where the band had been such a major presence. It had all begun with a classic, very low budget, but unforgettable video.
Low budget, high concept, instant classic. Of the 50,000 clips submitted to MTV over the years, Smells Like Teen Spirit is, 13 years later, still considered by many to be the best video ever made. 4 minutes and 36 seconds that would forever change the course of both Nirvana and MTV.
There has not been, in my 17 years here, one other song or video that had as dramatic an effect of a change.
They created a playground for all of the other bands to play in. It was just so amazing to me, like that suddenly Rancid was in heavy rotation.
The network's first encounter with Nirvana came weeks before Teen Spirit hit the air at a radio festival in Boston where they were just one of 20 or so bands on the bill.
We're just this rock and roll band. We play our songs, you know, and play them to the people, and people like them, that's cool.
Less than a year after, Nirvana was asked to open the Video Music Awards.
Anytime you watch the VMAs, we always try to start the show with a bang. It says something about that year.
As it turned out, though, Nirvana did not open the 1992 VMAs, and almost didn't play at all.
We didn't want to play Smells Like Teen Spirit. So we came into the rehearsals and we were going to play 2 new songs.
Nirvana comes to rehearsal and just out of the blue, instead of doing Smells Like Teen Spirit, they do Rape Me.
Then we get a call the next day that MTV says we cannot play unless we play Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Nirvana settled on Lithium after the provocatively titled Rape Me was rejected by nervous MTV execs. But Cobain was not without a sense of humor.
When Nirvana's turn finally came to perform, Kurt Cobain had a little fun and actually started the first few chords of Rape Me. And he did about 4 bars of it, and then they kicked right into Lithium. So it was their way of sort of playing with MTV.
But this VMA performance may be best remembered for an incident that had nothing to do with the song Nirvana played. When Novoselic's amp shorted out, rendering his instrument useless, Chris tossed his bass in the air, and what went up came down hard. Nirvana made the news backstage that year too. It was there that we got our first glimpse of the family Cobain: Kurt, Courtney, and their daughter Frances Bean, just 3 weeks old at the time. Young Frances got her first taste of rock and roll bad behavior that day when Guns N' Roses frontman Axl Rose angrily tried to settle an old score he had with her parents.
He told me to keep my woman in line. We were sitting there eating food, and Axl walked by, and Courtney and I just jokingly said, "Axl, will you be the godfather of our child?" You know, we're just joking around, and he turned around and started pointing his finger, and it was really aggressive and mean, like threatening to beat me up and stuff, and I couldn't help but laugh, because I haven't been in that kind of a situation since I was in 6th grade.
Nirvana took to the MTV stage on a number of memorable occasions in its short but celebrated career. They had him hanging from the rafters during this more intimate appearance on 120 Minutes. And if you rang in the Live and Loud New Year with MTV in 1994, you saw Nirvana single-handedly headline what was to be a double bill. Pearl Jam bailed at the last minute. But Nirvana's most renowned performance was actually its quietest. Taped in November 1993, Nirvana Unplugged is still regarded as one of the great performances in MTV's history.
What else should I be? All apologies.
It's a shame in a way because the Unplugged would have still been historical had Kurt not killed himself. And I just hope it's not only remembered for that.
Nobody who got turned on to Nirvana by Smells Like Teen Spirit will likely ever forget the video for that song, or the band that made it, or the dark and startling day when that band, along with its troubled leader, came to a sudden, awful end. When we come back, we'll take you back to April 8th, 1994.
Complete the trilogy Tuesday on DVD.